I'm really honored to be here. First of all, I just want to say thank you to Bishop Mancini. I don't know about you, but my heart is burning within me. And I think he modeled what we all need. He's engaged. It's pretty easy. It's pretty easy to see that he is in love with that person, Jesus. And that engagement, he said, I do and I will. And I think that's what this is about now. We've seen what the challenge is. I think we know what the challenge is. We know what the goal is. Now we're going to think about you and me. We're going to think about our souls. I have spent the last 13 years of my life thinking about the human soul. And it's not just one thing, it is a multitude of things. I really believe that God created each one of us, and then in each one of us, he placed his image. So the collective body of Christ contains the very image of God. And none of us have all of him, but each of us have part of him. And it's when we come together like this that we have the kind of spiritual energy that it takes to meet the challenges that we face in this world. This morning I want to share some things that I've learned in thinking about what's good and right and strong in people for the last 13 years. I was thinking about it in February. It was my 13th year as being a consultant for the Gallup organization, and I got started at Gallup about the same time that the StrengthsFinder had been created by Don Clifton, who is really the human genius behind all of this. And so every day for the past 13 years, I have had a chance to think and talk either about my own strengths or someone else's strengths. Who they are, what makes them tick, how they can make the world a better place. And I have to tell you that I have been transformed by that. And it's my hope that as I share some of the things that I've learned, it will help you to kind of go beyond this instrument to seeing that this is really a part of what it means, I believe, to be a follower of Christ. I want to, first I got to make sure I can run this. I want to talk about some concepts today. I want to talk about some principles. I want to talk about maybe some myths. And I want to try to bring some metaphors that will help to take this strengths-based approach to life and ministry to a deeper level in your life and in your parishes. And I want to begin with the whole concept of the integrity of being. I think a lot of times when we think about integrity, we think about integrity of doing the right thing. And I certainly am all for that, by the way. But I think there is also an integrity of being. That is, that we must be who we are and use what we have been given. We can't become anything we want to be, but we can become much more of who we already are. I really believe that maybe one of the greatest human temptations that I have probably had in my life, and maybe I see other people have, is this. One of the greatest human temptations may be that sometimes we wish we could live someone else's life. We try to be someone that we're not. I have grandchildren, and there's something that people do when they talk about grandchildren that kind of bugs me. What they do is they say, she looks just like someone else. And I can certainly see the resemblance. But what I know that each person is unique. Each person is themselves. And I think what makes us effective or useful is not that who we are is superior. What makes us effective and useful, no matter what the enterprise or the endeavor that we're involved in, is that we are real. We are authentic. We're not trying to be someone we're not. I heard a speech. It was some time back when Steve Jobs from Apple died. He was in the news a lot, and I came across a speech that he gave at Stanford University commencement shortly after he had found out that he had cancer. And I like what he said there. And here it is. He said, "Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. They somehow already know what you truly want to become. Everything else is secondary." The energy that we need to meet the commitment, to meet the challenge of this new evangelism is within you. It's not out there, it's in here. God placed it in each one of us. And I think it's important that we come to grips with what each of us have to bring to the table, to the party, to the challenge. And I'm not going to suggest that StrengthsFinder is the tool that can tell you everything about you. I'm not here to say that instrument can explain everything about something as complex as a human being, but it can tell you something. And it's my hope, and I think it was Don Clifton's hope, is that it would start on a process that could help maximize people to their potential, to their fullest potential. And I think as Christians, this is not just narcissism here. This is not being just absorbed with who we are. I think it's something that Scripture encourages us to do. I like these words from Galatians chapter 4, verses 4 and 5. And this is what the Apostle Paul said. He said, "Make a careful exploration of who you are and the work you have been given, and then sink yourself into that. Don't be impressed with yourself. Don't compare yourselves with others. Each of you must take responsibility for doing the creative best you can do with your own life." Make a careful explanation of who you are and the work you've been given. I think we have a pretty clear picture after listening to Bishop Mancini of what it is that we have to do, the challenge that we face. Now the question is, we know the goal. Now it's time to look into the soul, to help us understand what role could we play in this. How can we help bring life, the life of the resurrection, into the lives of people so that our faith communities can truly be alive? I think there is a process of how we become who we are, and it begins with awareness. And it involves identifying who you are and who you're not. And everyone in this room is some combination of those things. There are things that you are, and there are things that you're not. Let's accept it. But I think what happens sometimes is we are so embarrassed about the things that we're not that we kind of hide even what we are. So I think the first step is just an awareness. The second step is acceptance. Some of you know who you are, but you don't like who you are. And I would say, get over it. Accept it. Figure out how you can love who you are. I don't think you'll ever live your strengths if you don't love your strengths. And I think the reason many times people don't love their strengths is they don't understand them yet. I think it's a lifelong experience. I don't think you're done learning about who you are until the day you die. So this careful exploration that Paul was talking about, it's not just something we're going to do on a Saturday morning at Sacred Heart School. This is the process of life, understanding the beauty and the power that God has given each one of us. So we go through awareness, we have acceptance. Appreciation is embracing and enjoying who you are, getting comfortable in your own skin. And that does not happen immediately. I think sometimes that's why it's hard to be around junior high people. They don't embrace who they are yet. They're trying to be somebody else, and it's hard to be around people who are trying to be somebody else. But it's not enough just to appreciate what you have. We are stewards. God gave you a gift. He gave you a life. And your job is to become more and better. And maybe that's why what we have to offer the world has not been better. Is because we have not gotten better at who God made us to be. Now, this is not just a solo here, folks. This is about the body of Christ. No one of us, isolated from others, can do what needs to be done. There needs to be alignment. We need to find the place. This is a big enterprise, bringing new life to the church. There are many roles that have to be played. And please, I beg you, find a role that you love and jump into it with all your heart. The second thing is escape situations that highlight your weaknesses. Please don't volunteer for something you hate to do and are not very good at. Actually, the chances for success are better if you say no sometimes. Sometimes doing nothing is better than doing something really terribly. And that's a little bit of what maximizers say. Do things well. And finally, affiliation. Partner with those who are strong where you are weak. We need each other. None of us have it all. So we can do our part, and you can do your part, and together is the way that this works. Fitting together, blending our unique talents in order to form more complete and effective individuals, partnerships, and teams and organizations, community. Integrity is important. Being who we are is important, but that's not enough. There also needs to be what I would call integration of being. And I think integration occurs internally as we put the pieces together of who we are. And again, I think that takes a lifetime to do, the kind of complexity involved with who we are. But I think it also involves fitting together with the people around us. It's interesting, the word integration, the opposite of integration is segregation. It's when we do our own thing, when we have silos. I see this all the time when I work with all kinds of human organizations. They talk about silos. Marketing won't talk to sales, and the executives won't talk to management. We all live in our own separate worlds, and there is no alignment. There is no integration. I want to first talk about the importance, I think, of integration of being with regards to you and me. I think sometimes we get the idea that we are just one thing. It is impossible to describe a human being using just one word. Now, we do it all the time. My wife will do this to me occasionally. Sometimes my wife will say to me, "Curt, you're a man." Now, I know that when she says, "Curt, you're a man," I'm not getting ready to be complimented. But we do that all the time, don't we? We characterize ourselves or one person as just being one thing. He's young. She's old. He's a man. She's a woman. One race or another race. When we use one word to describe the complexity of a human person, I think we are doing God a great disservice. He did not create one-dimensional beings. And I'm afraid to say that sometimes people do this very thing with the strengths finder. They say things like, "Oh yeah, he's a woo," wink, wink. People with woo get picked on a lot, but they can take it. But this person may have that pattern of being very outgoing and gregarious, but they did not get a report that says, woo, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5. Nobody is just one thing. In fact, you could look at your own signature themes. Did you know that in your signature themes, top 5 themes, there are 10 different pairs? And this kind of, if you don't believe me, here's the math up here. And there is a dynamic that's created in these things. These themes within you do not live in silos. They are not segregated from each other's. Your one theme your one pattern has an influence on the other pattern. And I think I've got mine up here. You saw my 5 themes, but this is who I am when you take into consideration these things. So part of what I want you to think about is your versatility. You can be creative in how you respond to life. You may have more things to offer and more ways to operate than you realize. It's almost like we have a recipe, a list of ingredients to choose from, and depending on the situation, one might be more relevant than another. Think of yourself as a chef, or if you don't like cooking, think of yourself as a chemist. You know, the way that these chemicals fit together. This is kind of part of what I'm doing in this day and age. And Father Mellon, is he here? He was talking, I don't know what you were talking about, technology they were talking. I'm on Twitter. I didn't know I ever would be able to say that, but I am on Twitter. I am tweeting. You may not know what that is, but one of the things that I'm working on is to try to define all of the 561 possible pairs that exist with 34 themes of talent. And so every day I sit down at my computer and I tweet. I try to think about how could these things fit together. And if you'd like to follow me, there it is. Maybe I'll do yours sometimes. So, but I think that's part of the challenge that we have with this instrument is to make it come alive and to really capture the essence of who we are. Here's some examples of some things I've written. I don't know if anybody has achiever responsibility in here. I'm guessing quite a few of you do. I wrote, I get things done, sometimes because it feels so good, and sometimes because I promised someone I would. In other words, there's 2 reasons you get things done. Kind of more of an internal fire in your belly, but this responsibility, it's about the commitments that you make to other people. So it's like you have a dual drive. Here's another one. Maybe not quite so many have this one. This is kind of what I would call a paradoxical pair, analytical and empathy. I actually have both of these in my top 10. Anybody have these 2 themes? See, this is a pretty rare combination, but if you find someone like this, it says, my approach in life will involve both the rational intelligence of my mind and the emotional intelligence of my heart. You know, you think about Father Mancini talking about the heart, the importance of... Those of you who have empathy, you may have a part to play in this. Understanding the human heart. If we want to reach the heart, we have to be aware of the heart and sensitive to the heart. Here's another one. Arranger, developer. Anybody with these 2 themes in the room here? Good, good. My best contribution will involve getting the work done through people or getting the people done through work. That's a pretty good combination. I think I'd like to work with someone like that. They want to get stuff done. They want to get you done. And when I say done, I mean complete, matured, developed. And then here's the next one. I think this may be a key pair for the challenge that you face. Anybody here with belief and positivity? Good. We may have to look for some more of these people. Here's what it says. I get excited about my values. The blend of hope and purpose will often be contagious, attracting others to the cause. I think these are people who are more for something than against something. These are winsome witnesses. God created people to do this. And then here's the last one. And by the way, there's another 250 of these online if you're interested. Connectedness relator. Anybody with this combination? I bet there's a lot of this in the room. I see connectedness a lot when I work with people from faith communities, and relator is quite a common theme as well. I am a global and a local citizen. I have compassion for those who are far away and intimacy for those who are near. Seems like that's something that could help in this challenge that we face. It seems like those are strengths that could make a difference. The motivation for human well-roundedness may come from the following mistaken notion. If I'm somewhat good at everything, I won't need to rely on anyone. Doing it all in some ways is easier, but in the final analysis, the results will tend to be less positive. I think part of the challenge that we face in our Western culture is the whole sense of independence. The idea that if we have to get help from somebody, there must be something wrong with us. You really ought to be able to do it all yourself. So we avoid integration, both internally and externally, because it is hard. It's hard to work together. It's hard to try to fit these pieces together inside of ourselves. But remember, that's why Paul said, make a careful exploration of who you are. In other words, try to figure yourself out so you know what your best stuff is. And then find people that you can partner with who need what you have and they need what you have. I think that's the only way that we're going to find human wholeness, is by partnering. And that's why I think marriage may be the ultimate partnership. And I think, as Bishop Mancini said, the fact that so many partnerships, marriage partnerships, are failing is, I think, a symbol of why we are failing in other areas as well. We don't know how to partner. We don't know how to integrate me with you so that together we can do something great. We've talked about integration. We've talked about integrity of being. We've talked about integration of being. I also want to talk about innovation. This is new. New requires innovation. And I think innovation is certainly about new technology, about this new world that we're living in. It is certainly a part of how we will do a better job of engaging people in our world for the cause of Christ. But I think there's also innovation that occurs within us, the innovation of the soul, finding new and better ways of using our soul to fulfill our roles and to achieve important goals. And I want to talk a little bit about what I mean by that. I don't think anybody took the strength finder and got a report that says, sorry, you don't have any patterns. Or it said, you just had one. I think that's what I like about this instrument, is everybody gets a top 5. Everybody has something. Now, everybody has themes. That's what these are, themes of talent. But not everybody has transformed these themes of talent into productive and useful strengths. And so here's kind of a principle that I've kind of come across. Clifton StrengthsFinder themes don't make people great or terrible. People make the StrengthsFinder themes great or terrible. And the question is, will you be a theme poster child or a theme problem child? When people think of this theme, will they think, boy, I hope I don't get that one? Or will I think, boy, I hope I have that one? Because this is a tool. You are real. This tool is measuring the talent that God put in you. And that talent was in humanity before the Clifton StrengthsFinder was created. But you know something about human talent? There's 2 things about it that make it kind of difficult to measure. It's internal and it's invisible. That's the nature of the soul, isn't it? It's internal and invisible. And we need some help figuring out these things. But I want to draw some special attention to this verse again. Make a careful exploration of who you are and the work you have been given, and then sink yourself into that. Don't be impressed with yourself. In other words, you're not the only person who has talents. But don't compare yourself with others. Don't try to be somebody else. Each of you must take responsible for doing the creative best you can do with your own life. In other words, don't get stuck in a rut. You probably can figure out new ways to use these themes that you've lived with your whole life. You might have a theme in one area that you might be able to use in another area. There is never just one way to fulfill a role or achieve a role. For example, there is not just one way to proclaim the gospel. I think that's part of what this is about. How do we proclaim the gospel in a way that it will engage the hearts and minds and souls of people? Well, this is not a new challenge. Consider the writers of the four gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Four different individuals that God chose to proclaim this story initially in writing. And I think it's kind of interesting the unique creatures that each of these writers were. First of all, there was Matthew, tax collector, probably a bit of an accountant type, an apostle. He was writing to a Jewish audience. So his style was really facts and evidence, kind of a good thing for a tax collector, a guy who knew his way around a ledger sheet, being able to quantify things. Facts and evidence to prove that Jesus was the Messiah. He told the story through the filter of his own life. He didn't try to be Luke. He didn't try to be Mark. He didn't try to be John. He was Matthew. And he told the story through his filter. And then there was Mark. He actually wrote the first, I think we believe that Mark was the first gospel written. And he was a missionary with Paul and Barnabas, a very different audience. He was in Rome, not the Jewish world, the Roman world. And his approach is much more fast-paced and visual. He might have worked in this century. He probably would have used PowerPoint. I don't know about the other ones, but he might have. This one might have. Then there's Luke, a Greek physician who traveled with Paul. And his audience was the very thoughtful Greeks. And so his style was very careful. I'm sure he pondered over the words that he used, and he wanted to make sure that he got the chronology of right. I think Luke might have had context. And then finally there was John, a fisherman who became an apostle and an elder. And he was speaking to a Gentile Christian audience, and his style of these three is more personal, like a storyteller, like he was actually there with the dialogue of the stories. So innovation, be creative at who you are, and don't stop being creative. Now, some of you might say, you might have got your StrengthsFinder results and you looked at them and said, oh shoot, I don't have any people skills. I've got good news. You can be creative. You can use themes that are not people skills for doing stuff with people. Here's the good news. There are no antisocial themes. Some are more social than others, but there are no themes that are antisocial, because I don't think God created us to be antisocial. Let me give you an example here. Try using one of your performance-oriented themes, that is, one that's about thinking or doing in a people-oriented way. An example would be, maybe you have achiever. Any of you have achiever in the room here? Okay. Here's one of the things I'm going to suggest for you for some homework, and you're probably already doing this. Put people on your list of things to do. You've got tasks, you've got lots of tasks. Put a person on your list, and please give it priority A. I'm sure you probably got A, B, C, D. You can use your achiever to get closer to people. Be diligent socially. You see, that's a creative use of achiever. It's certainly made to help you be productive and get work done, but within the context of that theme, you can do many things beyond tasks. Now, I think the same is true for people who might have kind of people-oriented themes, and maybe you don't have any performance-oriented themes. I think the same thing could be, you could use your people-oriented themes to help you get more done. Does anybody have woo in here, by the way? Yay, Les. You have the ability to charm people to help you do things. You can mobilize the troops. You know a lot of folks. You can send out an email saying, I'm moving. Can you come and help me? It works. That is and maybe you'll get an award. That we should have kind of StrengthsFinder awards. The most creative use of a theme in an area not like it's supposed to be. So these are not intended to put you into a box. I mean, the StrengthsFinder is not intended to give you an excuse to do nothing. I don't have discipline, so I guess I don't have to be organized. We can't do that. It's about using what you've got to get done, what has to get done. In life, in work, in the parish, in the church. I want to move now to the appreciation of being. The differences that exist in human beings are not necessarily problems I need to solve. Instead, they could actually be potential resources that I could utilize or maximize. That's the thing about working with other people. I can almost guarantee you in that group you're not going to find your clone. I can almost guarantee you there are no two people in this room that have the same top 5 themes almost in any order. The odds of that happening, just to find one person that has your same 5 themes, is 1 in 275,000. I know we have a big crowd. Do we have 275,000 here? I know you would have liked to have had 275,000, but in a group of 275, the odds of finding someone who's just like you. So the challenge of that is that you're different. And sometimes we use that word, I think, in a negative way. You know, you've talked to somebody and afterwards, boy, she was different. That's that one word thing, remember? Whenever we use one word to describe someone, there's usually negative intent. And there is also usually negative effect. So stop doing that. Don't do what I just did there. Here's why I think appreciation is so important. How we think and feel about a person will have an impact on our involvement and interaction with that person. If our thoughts and feelings about the person are primarily positive in nature, then our involvement and interactions with that person will be primarily positive in nature. If our thoughts and feelings are primarily negative in nature, then our involvement and interactions will be primarily negative about that person. I've been thinking about what's right and good and strong in people for the last 13 years, and here's the good news. I have become slightly more positive. Now, that doesn't sound earth-shattering, does it? But here's the thing with slightly more positive. Let's say I was kind of over here. I became slightly more positive. That's not a big, in terms of degrees, that's not far. But here's the deal. When you project that into the future, that takes you to a very different place. And here's the other thing why appreciation is important. Green and red, I know, they told me. Growth is not likely to occur in an environment that is primarily negative in nature. It is difficult to be helpful to someone for whom we have little appreciation or positive regard. You're not going to be able to attract and help someone you despise. I think about this call to a new evangelization. I think it's really about the appreciation. I think the appreciation of being is an important part of that. This great commandment of Jesus Jesus said this, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" Jesus replied, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself." Me, them, and it. Me, them, and it. Love yourself. In fact, I think you're going to have a hard time loving somebody else if you don't first love yourself. Accept who God created you to be. Enjoy who God created you to be. Amplify who God created you to be. Find partners who can complement you and use it. But it starts with yourself. And you might say, well, I don't know if I can love myself. You don't know me. You don't know my flaws, my shortcomings. And that's what I'd say. Well, we love ourselves because God first loved us. He took care of those flaws by the gift of his Son, who paid the price for our transgressions. And so, I wonder in some way if the explanation of the decline of the church is a failure to love and be loved as Christ loved. So part of what this could do is, how can I use these themes that God has given me to love God and others? How can I use these themes to be formed as a disciple or to be a former of disciples? And then finally, this passage from Philippians. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about these things. Does that mean there's nothing bad in the world? Absolutely not. And I don't think the world is ever going to be perfect. But we need to be intentional about thinking about the good that we see in ourselves. And we didn't earn it, we didn't create it, it's a gift. And the good that we see in others. We need to be intentional about that. I want to close with a story. And this is a story you may have heard. But I think it's a story that really ties into the message and the purpose for this event. And it's called The Monk Story. So I'd like you to just listen as I read. A monastery had fallen on hard times. It was once part of a great order, which, as a result of religious persecution in the 17th and 8th centuries, lost all of its branches. It was decimated to the extent that there were only 5 monks left in the mother house, the abbot and 4 others, all of whom were over 70. Clearly, it was a dying order. Deep in the woods surrounding the monastery was a little hut that the rabbi from a nearby town occasionally used for a hermitage. One day, it occurred to the abbot to visit the hermitage to see if the rabbi could offer any advice that might save the monastery. The rabbi welcomed the abbot and commiserated. "I know how hard it is," he said. "The spirit has gone out of the people. Almost no one comes to the synagogue anymore." So the old rabbis and the abbot wept together and read parts of the Torah and spoke quietly of deep things. The time came when the abbot had to leave. They embraced. "It's been wonderful being with you," said the abbot, "but I have failed my purpose for coming." "Have you no piece of advice that might save the monastery?" "No, I'm sorry," the rabbi responded. "I have no advice to give. The only thing that I could tell you is that the Messiah is one of you." When the other monks heard the rabbi's words, they wondered what possible significance it might have. The Messiah is one of us? One of us here at the monastery? Do you suppose he meant the abbot? Of course, it must be the abbot, who has been our leader for so long. Or on the other hand, he might have meant Brother Thomas, who is such a holy man. Or could he have meant Brother Elrod, who was so crotchety? But then Elrod is so very wise. Surely he could not have meant Brother Philip. He is so passive. But then, magically, he's always there when you need him. Of course he didn't mean me. Yet supposing he did, oh Lord, not me, I could mean that much to you, could I? As they contemplated this matter, the old monks began to treat each other with extraordinary respect on the off chance that one of them might be the Messiah, and on the off chance that each monk himself might be the Messiah. They began to treat themselves with extraordinary respect. Because the forest where the monastery was situated was beautiful, people occasionally came to visit, perhaps picnic or to wander along the old paths, most of which led to the dilapidated chapel. These visitors sensed the aura permeating the atmosphere. The visitors began to come more frequently, bringing friends, and their friends brought friends. Some of the younger men who came to the forest began to engage in conversations with the monks. After a while, one asked if he could join then one another and another. Within a few years, the monastery became once again a thriving order, and thanks to the rabbi's gift, the vibrant, authentic community of light and love for each other and others had blossomed. This is a story. It's a vision. I think it's the vision that Bishop Mancini painted for us this morning. And it begins within each one of us, treating ourselves as if we might be the Messiah, and treating those around us as if they are Jesus incarnate. I'm excited for what God is going to do in this Archdiocese, with the leadership that you have, with all of you here. Live your strengths. Use who God created you to be. Use your soul to find a role to achieve the goal that this world needs. We have something better to offer. So I challenge you to use your best stuff, whatever that is. Thank you.